Fun with Failure.
Hello and welcome to Fun with Failure, TIFU edition. I've compiled some funny stories from the Reddit forum TIFU, which I hope you'll enjoy. We've got stories of exploding eggs all the way to throwing steaks. So sit back and here we go. When I go shopping online, I always give a phone number that is one digit off from mine. That's because I don't want them to sell my information. By using the same number every time, I am consistent if I'm already in the system. I've been using this number for 10 years, from JCPenney's to Best Buy to financial services and etc. Yesterday I got a new client. He had the same number that I've been using as my fake number. I tried my best not to show my emotion to hearing it, but I asked him how long he had that number. He said, about 15 years, but I may get a new one because I get non-stop telemarketing calls. And I told him, I get some once in a while too. Aren't they so annoying? I said, nervously laughing. Then he said, yeah, I think maybe someone is giving out my number because they keep asking for so-and-so's name and if they're available. Then I said, that happens to me from time to time as well. People think that I'm one of the old householders or my boss. Oh well, email me if you change your number. Then he says, oh, I will. Actually, they're asking for you pretty much all the time. What's your number? I bet they're getting us confused. It seems strange that they always ask for you even though we're not even related. I gave him my work number. So tonight, I had a meeting at this guy's office to go over a proposal. I spent too much time reading comments this afternoon and I felt bad. And I told him my personal number as being one digit off from his. So he says, yeah, I figured everyone was misdialing the last few numbers, or this might have been your old number. He knew right away when he saw my name. So I never told him, and I'd given every company on earth his number, not knowing it was him. But I did tell him that I gave the wrong number at the Guitar Center a few times. Don't ask me why I come clean to one place, but not the rest of them. He laughed it off. So I've learned not to give any fake numbers anymore. And I did bring the guy a gift card to Longhorn Steakhouse as a thanks and take your wife out to dinner, when in reality, I felt bad because I didn't think through my actions. This happened last night, or this morning. It was a weird one, let me tell you. I went to bed around midnight, woke up for the first time to take my morning shower. I could barely keep my eyes open. After my shower, eyes still closed. I looked at the time and it was literally 12:45 a.m. I got 45 minutes of sleep and I woke up so delusionally thinking it was 6 a.m. So I went back to bed after my shower. Flash forward a couple of hours. It's 2:30 a.m. Same thing happens. I get up from my bed and walk straight to the fridge to get out eggs. See, I like to eat fresh eggs, so I put them on to boil every morning, except I was in a delusional phase again. I have not been getting much good sleep lately. I thought it was 6 a.m. like the first time, so, eyes half closed, I look back and I think that I was literally half-consciously sleepwalking. I put my eggs to boil, looked at the time, then realized it was 2:30 in the freaking morning. What the heck? So I went back to bed. Yep, you heard it right. I went back to bed. No alarms, nothing. I went straight to bed and crashed on the spot. And shortly after, I was woken up by the sound of an explosion. I walk into my kitchen, and there are black eggshells and boiled egg yolks all over the walls. Also burning the living heck out of my pot. Thank goodness it's Friday, everybody. I'm gonna have to get some much needed sleep this weekend. When I was 12 years old, I found some petrol in our shed. Because I wanted to see how it burned and see what flames it produced, I filled up a Pringles can full of it and set it on fire. As I put the lighter on the petrol, I heard my mom coming downstairs. Me and my sister were looking at each other with that, oh crap, look on your face that you give your siblings. Like when you're about to get your butt whipped. First thing I do is grab a sledgehammer. Why I did this and why there was a random sledgehammer nearby, I don't know. I could have probably actually let it burn out or just left it, but I hit it as hard as I could with the sledgehammer. I smashed the thing as hard as I could, like I was Tiger Woods, and I was hoping for a hole-in-one. Didn't quite happen like I imagined. I got covered in burning petrol. All I could see was flames. I was crapping myself. My school uniform and my body was on fire. all I heard was, "Stop, drop, and roll!" from my sister. There's me rolling around on the floor in some puddles until the flames went out. I got up, grabbed my school bag, and went to school. I never smelt so bad than I did that day. I had burn marks on my uniform and I had some hair missing. No one person said anything to me at school. My friends and teachers said nothing. How bad is that? Never done that again. Before we get started, I want to share a little bit of backstory before I kick off this horrible story. I turned 16 in August, and I just got my license on November 22nd, which means I get to drive a new car. In case you're wondering, I got a 2007 BMW 328i, which is a very nice car, considering I would have never expected that out of my family. And I've been warned, ever since I got this car, that I was supposed to be very, very careful with it. Because if I crash it, I would not get one as nice as it ever. Let's start off the night with the most brilliant plan anyone could think of, while eating donuts at 2 a.m. Now here in my town, we have a local donut bakery sort of thing that opens up around 2:30 a.m. almost every day. So living in a small town, having nothing better to do than to go get some donuts and enjoy their goodness they bring to my heart. So skip ahead when the three of us, which is my brother, our friend, and I, get to our destination safely. Now don't get me wrong, I am a very careful driver, and I'm aware of most things, and I know how to obey the laws and such. But this night, oh, this night is special. We get our donuts in the bakery, and we sit at one of the little tables. While eating, my friend, we'll call him Anthony, comes up with a plan that will give us a little adrenaline rush that we so dearly needed at 2:45 a.m. His genius plan is to go to the abandoned church, which is known to house some satanic cults, and they get together every once in a while, and they do their little rituals in the place. There's a tradition around our close group that one of the people from the car runs up to the door and seems to scream or bang on the door, and then hauls butt back to the car, and we get the heck out of there. Now this is my first time going here, so I have no idea what to expect. As we're making our way to this place, we're making all sorts of turns down roads I've never been on, despite this being my hometown. We are around 2 miles away from this place, when the road leads off into a sort of gravel road, which was between a field on the left and woods and forest on the right, which already creeps me the heck out. So in the distance, I can start to make out some white building in the middle of the field, and this also sends shivers down my spine. We pull into the little entrance, which I would say is less than half a football field away. Then I slow down to a complete stop. This is where the crap hits the fan. So I heard from another close friend, who is not Anthony, nor my brother. When you go up to knock on the building's door, 3 rather large men come out, in cloaks, and have hoods that drape over their heads, and they would start jogging towards the car. And at this point, the friend that went to knock on the door is already in the car, and the car is already in full reverse, hightailing it out of there, which was the end of their story. Now, back to my story. We're sitting in front of the church, and we're maybe 20 seconds debating on whether or not we should do this, when my eyes play tricks on me, and I see a figure next to the structure, and you sure as heck knew that I already had that thing in reverse, and I was going like 20 to 30 miles per hour. I tried to whip the car around and speed out of there, just like Van Diesel would in that situation, when I hear my car go through a whole bunch of bushes, and then BAM! My car hits a tree. In all honesty, I genuinely thought that we were going to die, because at this point, I'm still thinking that a madman in a cloak was about to get us. So I drive around 6 miles away, and finally get out to check my car. I go around to the passenger side, and I realize I don't have a dang right side mirror anymore. And not just that, but now I'm missing the gas plate that covers the gas tank. My taillight is completely smashed, and there's a big freaking dent from the taillight to the back right side of my door, and it's a half a foot deep into my car. Skip ahead to right now, after explaining everything to my parents, and now I'm waiting to know what will be the future of my car. So recently, I've been suffering from allergies in the middle of December. I'm leaking from my eyes, my nose, and I'm sneezing every 10 seconds. Hooray for whatever's in the freaking air. I remembered how inhaling some peppermint oil, it can relieve some of the symptoms. If you can't guess what happened next, I took a dropper and I squeezed 2 to 3 drops of oil in each nostril. Now, whatever allergies I did have, had nothing on what came next. I done screwed up. It was like Satan himself was blowing into my nose. I seriously considered calling the ambulance, because this stuff, it was making me dizzy at the same time. I used what semblance of saneness I had remaining, and I tried to wipe away some of the poison out with a tissue. Several hours of torture later, I found that I was still alive, albeit without the sense of smell. Hopefully that'll come back soon. There was a new feature that was added to a game called Pokemon Go a few hours ago, which was called Raids, where one popped up in my city. So I got on my bus, wearing a sweater and some shorts, and some running shoes. Now this is in negative 23 degrees weather, which is in Canada, and I went to the raid area. When I arrived 30 minutes early, I'd been standing there in the cold for 30 minutes. Finally, the time rolls around, and I'm already out in the freezing cold. I do the raid with like 35 other people, and I complete it. Now it's time to catch it. Nope, I'm way too cold. So I walk to the bus stop, realizing that I have to wait 30 minutes for a bus. At this point, everything is numb, and I'm ready to just die. Finally, the bus rolls through, and I look at my toes and they are red. I sit in the 15-minute bus ride home, and when I get off, my toes are purple, and I'm freaking out. So now I'm sitting in my washroom with my feet on the heater. Well, let's hope I don't lose any toes. This actually took place a couple of years ago. I had just gotten a new job, and I was really excited about it. So I was delighted when my boss, who I tried to establish a rapport with, invited me and my husband over to her home for dinner. Well, mostly delighted. My husband is, well, he is the sweetest, but he has a history of doing some really dumb stuff. Because of this, I was worried about him coming along. By the time the day of the dinner arrived, I had become so anxious about it that I actually floated the idea to my boss that I wasn't sure if he would be able to make it or not. She was clearly taken aback and responded, "Oh no, I really hoped that he could come. I have a dinner for 3 all ready to go." After hearing her dismay, I assured her that he would find a way to be there. Well, we made it over to her apartment on time, and things actually started out really well. It was actually just the 3 of us, which surprised me somewhat, and it made me a little less concerned about my husband, as crowds tend to really bring out his unpredictability. I had just started to relax, and was a couple of bites into my delicious cooked steak, when things took a horrible turn. My boss had just stepped into the kitchen to check on dessert, when I noticed something odd out of the corner of my eye. It was one of those things you knew something strange was about to happen, but you're not really sure what. You have to really look over and focus your gaze to really comprehend it. I look over at my husband to see him holding his steak in his hand. It's hovering just an inch or two above his plate. Before I had a chance to fully comprehend what I was seeing and verbalize something that might have saved us all from this coming horror, he threw his steak, baseball style, across the room and straight into the dining room window. It hit the window, making a loud noise, and slowly slid down. Now my husband does some dumb things, but he's not a crazy person. Usually when he does something dumb, at least he understands what he's thinking. There's usually some semblance of rhyme or reason to what he does. In this case, I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't wrap my head around what was going on. I stared at him with what must have been the most confused look, and I watched as he stared back at me, an expression of utter horror painted across his face. I couldn't make any sense of what was happening, but I also didn't have time to try. Heard the footsteps of my boss, coming to see what that sound was. It suddenly sunk in that it didn't matter why he did it or what he did. He did it, and we were all about to come face to face with a very awkward situation. I could feel the anger flush through my face. For a brief moment, I contemplated trying to help my husband out of this. But no, this was his dumb mistake and he's gonna have to deal with it. Not like there was any other possible recovery anyway. My boss walks in to see the steak lying on the windowsill. There was the longest, most awkward pause while we just sat there frozen. My boss and I were staring at my husband, thus forcing the ball into his court, as the cringe started to hang in the air like an ocean fog. He finally manages to mutter out something incoherent about him being a klutz, and even tries to get me to back him up. I leave him high and dry with a deafening silence. He makes a poor attempt at cleaning the window, and he retrieves his steak. Mercifully, my boss asked me a question about work, and we both dive eagerly into the conversation. We all resume the rest of the evening pretending that he wasn't there. A sort of unspoken agreement by all of us that this was the only way to move forward. So as soon as we got to the car, my husband turns into a nervous chatterbox and tries to explain himself. Turns out he didn't like the way the steak was cooked, rare, and get this, he thought the window was open. My husband, ladies and gentlemen, tried to chuck his steak out of a 3-story window. He thought it was a reasonable solution to being served an undercooked steak. This actually happened when I was around 8 to 10 years old. I went to the movies. It was one of those action movies that you see all the time. I forgot the name of it. There was a part where they captured the main character and they tied him to a chair. Then they put a towel over his face and they poured a bucket of water on him. I thought to myself, it's so hot in that room, it probably didn't feel that bad. After the movie, I went home, and after a while, I got bored. Then I remembered the scene from the movie, and I decided to try it out myself. I went and got a towel, then I laid down on the counter. Then I put my head under the sink faucet. I put the towel over my face and turned on the water. You can only imagine what happened next. I suddenly realized what was happening in the movie. As soon as I turned the faucet on, I couldn't breathe. It scared me so much I thought I was going to die. With my amazing problem-solving skills, I tried to remove my head from under the faucet, and I hit my head really hard on it. I somehow managed to get the towel off my face, and I was freaking out while trying to turn the water off. I just sat on the ground and I cried for an hour. That's how I learned what waterboarding was. Also, after about an hour, I had a half-circle kind of bruise on the top of my forehead from the faucet. I work for a blind charity as a radio producer. I spend the evening at a Christmas party drinking with audiobook narrators from the same charity. I spend a lot of the night with one of the new presenters who is blind. We have a bit of a bonding session over a few beers and a couple of joints. We say our goodbyes and we go our separate ways. This is where I screwed up. I got on the train, I get off at my stop, and I get on a bus heading home. I decided in my drunken state that I wanted to see what it was like for my blind presenter, and to walk home as if I was blind. I closed my eyes and I walked a very, very straight path home, but I take a slight drunken slant. Next thing I know, I bang my head into the nearest wall, and I split my forehead open. I'm posting this as I return from a 3-hour journey from the ER, where I've had my face glued back together. I was out to brunch with my wife in this local place. They do really good innovative food. I ordered this pulled pork donut item. It sounds weird, but I'm in Melbourne and they really take their brunch seriously. The dish came with a little syringe full of mayo that you're supposed to inject into the donut then eat it. I began injecting my donut. I'm not sure if the mayo was thicker than it's supposed to be, but it was not coming out of the syringe, so I began to press harder and harder on the plunger until the whole thing exploded. Mayo got sprayed across the room. Probably 8 or so random diners got some degree of mayo all over themselves. This one girl across from us, she got the worst of it. It was all over her hair and her clothing. I was mortified. Everybody else thought it was hilarious though, and they were pretty cool about it, including the girl. I have never eaten a more self-conscious brunch in my life. I ate as fast as I could, I paid, and I got the heck out of there. I got a new cell phone about a year ago. I went to Tim Hortons with my dad to get coffee for my mom, and a donut for me. On our way back to the car, I accidentally turned on the voice assistant without realizing it. The voice assistant is for people who are handicapped. Then we came back home. In the garage, my dad and I heard a voice from my phone telling me what time it was. Without thinking, I assumed that I heard a voice from an actual person talking to my mom in the living room, because coincidentally, we had a new washer and dryer that day. So we went to the living room, and we didn't see anyone besides my mom. Then I realized it was my phone, so every time I got a notification or did anything on my phone, the voice kept talking. It was funny, but at the same time, it was annoying. So we tried restarting, but it didn't work. We had to do everything twice or more. In fact, I had a swipe code on certain apps, including the settings app, so it made it harder to get on settings to turn it off. So we kept trying to swipe the right code pattern more than twice, but it didn't unlock. We didn't know what else to do. I had an alarm already set on it, and I forgot about it. So later that day, my phone's alarm went off. And of course, I had to dismiss it twice. Then 5 minutes later, it went off again. We tried restarting the phone again, but it didn't work. It went off again 5 minutes later. Then I muted my phone. but then the alarm went off again, unmuting it. We were confused. I just turned off my phone. Later that day, I turned my phone on and I kept trying to get on settings, but I still couldn't. So I eventually uninstalled the app that had the swipe code on it. It worked, but I still had to press everything twice, and the voice kept chattering. Finally, I was able to get on the accessibility settings, and I turned off the voice assistant, and it worked. Now I have the lock swipe screen on, but I don't actually have the swipe code, so it won't happen again. Thank you very much for joining me for this edition of TIFU. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope you subscribe to my channel for more in the future. If you have any stories you'd like to share, just send it to my email that's listed below in the description. Thank you very much to the subscriber who submitted their story, and also the wonderful writers at Reddit. If you want to read these stories yourself, I've got them listed down below. Until next time, take very good care of yourselves and have a great day.